Well, welcome back to another Addy Hour episode. Of course, it's my pleasure to be able to continue these conversations on a lot of different topics, which I feel are really important for so many aspects of our lives. And today, really honored to be able to jump into a topic around children and youth. So really think about the next generation. And again, something that I think is very relevant for all of us, no matter at what level we interact with those in the generations coming up. So today, I'm honored to be able to welcome Dr. Michele Borba, who is an internationally renowned educational psychologist who has published over 20 books. One of those books includes Unselfie: Why Empathetic Kids Succeed in Our All About Me World. Michele is an expert in parenting, bullying, and character development, and she's spoken to over 1 million participants on 5 continents. So someone who has definitely gotten around and just really used that to inform her work. She's a regular NBC contributor who appears regularly on Today. She's also been featured as an expert on Dateline, The View, Dr. Phil, NBC Nightly News, Fox and Friends, Dr. Oz, and The Early Show, among many others. She also has a forthcoming book, which we'll be talking about as well. And she lives in Palm Springs, California with her husband, and is also the mother of 3 grown sons. So that's one thing that was intriguing to me as well, given your work. I would love to hear, to even meet your sons at some point, but that's a little bit of a tangent. But again, just want to welcome Dr. Michele Borba to the Addy Hour podcast.
Thank you. I have been so looking forward to this. I'm going to hire you as my new PR firm. Thank you.
I would take that up. Well, thanks so much for being here. And again, the work you do is so important.
Thank you.
But as my listeners, I really appreciate that. Definitely appreciate that. As my listeners know as well, one of the things that we really just value on this podcast is the opportunity to kind of peel back the layers, as it were, even as we bring in so many experts. So I did want to start out just asking you how you're doing at this moment with everything that's going on in our world, especially with the things that have been unfolding in Ukraine and Russia as well.
Well, I think I've been sobbing my way through the last 3 days with Ukraine. I just, the abomination is just extraordinary. I have friends who adopted children from Ukrainian orphanages. The biggest concern right now is trying to get a hold of them. And there's so many hundreds of kids under the age of even 4 that they're trying to figure out how to get them enough food in order to get them across a 20-hour walk. So that's been really hard. But the other thing, I have to keep telling myself is look to the other side. Otherwise I get too caught in Putin. And I looked to the other side and I saw images of hundreds of shoes in Poland and waiting for kids when they got off the train to take shoes, or the people in these other countries with signs saying, here I am, I've got a place for you to stay. That kind of a thing. It's just, it gives you that there's that evil, but wow, is there humanity if we look for it?
Yeah, I think that's so well said. We're seeing both sides of humanity in that way. And I appreciate you just sharing that honestly too, on, how you're navigating that, just to have a good place for yourself as well. And I know that's something that's near and dear to your heart, and something I've heard you speak about as well, even just in terms of compassion fatigue. And I was just curious, how, for any who, I'm sure a lot of people have heard that term, but how does that actually relate to the moment that we're in, as you shared so honestly about?
I think we're all feeling it. It's absolutely, if there was one universal diagnosis, it would be compassion fatigue. And what is it? It's we all need relationships. We all crave empathy. And when social distancing kicked in and we all had to be face to face and we couldn't see our family and friends, that's what rejuvenates us. On the other hand, what happened was stress starts to build. And when stress keeps building and uncertainty is there, you very often dial your empathy down, and the outcome is compassion fatigue. So when you see yourself being kind of, I'm not quite already there, or your energy level is low, what I'm really trying to do is read books that I could get into and absolutely love. I just finished The Lincoln Highway, and I fell in love with an 8-year-old kid named Billy. I'm going, my God, is that kid resilient? Or finding good, fun movies that you can see a good side. I watch the news content and try to turn it off so that I can see a different view. And I have been doing a lot of Zooming with people that I just really enjoy talking to, because it helps me build up. I think we all need to do that. Find what works for you, because you have to keep your empathy up and that stress level down.
Yeah. So important. And I feel like a lot of ways we've been trying to be creative about that as well. Some of the topics that we even talked about on this podcast have been around just the importance of social bonding and how that activates oxytocin in our brains and all those pieces. And whether that's still there on Zoom or not, but there's just a different energy that comes from being in person. But at the same time, like you said, there are opportunities to be able to connect with people in ways that we hadn't done that before. So appreciate you sharing how you're navigating that journey as well.
We just had to put our creativity into it. Well, that didn't work. So what are we going to do instead? And if we keep looking for the other options, I think that's how we thrive.
Yeah. And thrive. I'm glad you used that word, because that's something we'll definitely come back to. Maybe that was intentional, maybe not. But as we think about your new book as well,
that's part of my vocabulary these days. What are we going to do to keep on doing and raising thrivers? Yeah,
so important. Before we jump there, I just also wanted to hear a little bit about your journey. For those who may be familiar with you and those who aren't familiar with you, how did you? What started this passion to get into this area of child development and so many directions that you've taken it?
Absolute fluke. I was a history major.
Wow.
And I came home to...
I didn't expect that.
No, I came home to interview my dad, or just be with my dad from college for a weekend. And I'd never forget it. You will appreciate this. My dad was calm. He was cool. The World War II veteran, the superintendent. He published books. He was quite accomplished. But he was so upset that day, and he was holding a Newsweek magazine, and he was pacing the floor. He looked at me, and he didn't expect my visit. And the cover of the magazine was the first 3 years of a child's life, make or break them. He turned to me, pointed to it, and said, "Don't buy into this, Michele, because if this were true, I'd be dead today." Now, I sat there with my mouth open because I didn't know anything about my dad's parents. They had passed away. I never met my grandparents. He sat me down and he said, "This is what happened to me." His parents apparently came over very destitute, no English, from Italy, tried desperately to be able to jumpstart and wanted to give their kids the best they could. My dad was the youngest of 5, but my grandfather went and became a coal miner and then died when my dad was 2. Wow. And the only way that his extremely loving mother could afford the children and keep them alive was to put them in an orphanage. So he said, my dad said, "Okay, now I'm in an orphanage. My mom is destitute. I didn't know what was going on, but he said it was the people who saved me. The nuns had such empathy for me, Michele. That was the first thing, those nuns. When they released me, my mom got a little more money. It was the local librarian. She'd sneak books to me. Danny, you would read this. The neighbor next door would help me rake and give me a little bit extra money. A teacher would pull me aside and say, "I think you could be a good writer." He said, my proudest moment was when I got my scholarship from Stanford and UC Berkeley to walk in and say, "Thank you very much. Don't buy into it, Michele. People can make or break your life." I went back and changed my major to child development. So I was there, found this amazing piece of research by Emmy Werner, and that started my whole career. Emmy Werner substantiated what my dad said. She started to interview, 40 years, she studied the same 700 children who shouldn't have made it. Extreme adversity in their life. But 1/3 of them, even by their teens years, was bouncing back. And she discovered the same thing. Caring people in their lives, that was what my dad said. And then somebody had taught them protective buffers or coping strategies. And as a result, they made it. And that changed my whole career. Okay. Wow. That is true, that we got to get this information out to people.
Yeah, that's such a powerful story. And I love that it has a family connection as well. And it sounds like just in that moment, there was a shift and a passion that emerged.
It was an amazing shift. And later on, he said, "Michele, you should be a special ed teacher." That's how I ended up in special ed. Everything I learned from every part of my so-called career was from kids. It wasn't the textbook. It was the kids who convinced me, boy, this is doable stuff.
Yeah, the hands-on real life experience. Wow. Definitely appreciate that. And as you were getting into the work, how did people respond to you? Were people, because in the same way, it seems like there could be a mixed reaction. That either people would be really excited about it, or did people ask you why this route?
Why this route? Interestingly enough, you're probably one of the few people that ask why this route. So thank you very much. My goal is, it's funny, I just took a very slow path of a trajectory. Whenever a phone call would ring or something, I went into a different directory. I got my master's in learning disabilities. And then I found this passion for educational psychology. That's where I got my doctorate. I never planned to write a book, but I had one of my professors tell me I should. And then once I wrote the book, I never planned to be a speaker, but somebody called up and said, we need you to speak. So it was saying yes to all of these little avenues along the way. And I'm so glad I did.
Yeah. And it seems like it's tapped into your passion that was already there too. And so in a sense, you were poised and ready for the opportunities that came because you're already following that passion, which I think is really encouraging to hear.
I had no idea on how critical it is to find that passion. What's your joy? What do you just absolutely love to do? And just helping kids and working with families, no matter where I am, is my passion. And I've had the absolute amazing opportunity to work on, I think, 5 continents now. I'm up to 23 countries.
Wow.
And what I've learned from it is no matter where you are, everybody has the same loves and concerns and desires for their kids. So it works no matter where we are. Let's all work together. We're just all neighbors.
Yeah, that's so important, especially with everything we've been walking through in the last few years too. Would you say was that a surprise to you, or do you think that you expected to see that commonality?
Well, travel has broken every stereotype I had of life. If we could all travel more, it helps you no matter where you are. Just be far more open and realize they're just like me, no matter where I am. I don't care if it's religion, education, race, color, creed. Oh my gosh, people are wonderful. My best friends have got them all over the world. And I just got another call from Abu Dhabi this morning and said, can you come back? Oh, I'd love to come back.
Wow.
Just so fun.
Yeah, that's so powerful. I mean, it speaks to the global community that we have in a sense too. And even as you were sharing about your dad's story, it was just making me think about the community that he had around him. All those people who were sewing into his life in different ways and giving him encouragement, the empathy, the empowerment. I think that's so critical and so encouraging to hear that the way that you've built that into your work, even as one individual who has traveled to all of these places and has learned so much and is really sharing that with so many of us.
I love Susan Pinker's book, The Village Effect, because she said, if you really want to boost empathy, which is to me the social glue that holds us all together, remember that villages of about 150 people are the maximum of what kids really need in order to create that community. And what we've done is we've busted the villages, and we're these huge suburban areas. One of my favorite things to do is as I'm driving from, I don't care if it's Sri Lanka or in New York, I purposely go through an area, and I can go from a rural area, drive through, and I watch the facial expressions, and they look like they're happy. And then all of a sudden, as I go into a bigger area, in an urban area, a little bit more stress comes in. So maybe the first thing is we just got to capture each other and realize we are the support system. Let's get back to what we all need for optimum mental health. And as parents, let's also look at what we're modeling. Are we modeling thinking outside the box, exposing our children to differences, letting them be exposed to how many wonderful other opportunities they are? There's a great study that also said during the pandemic, the kids who seemed to fare a little better were the kids who didn't take the bus from New York to their school, but walked through the park in order to get to their school. Just those simple, ordinary things. I'll mention one thing. When I was writing on resilience, I've been trying to study this for 40 years after my dad. It's one of the best books I also read was by Ann Maston. She's from University of Minnesota. And what she did was she discovered when she did the same thing of kids growing up in extreme adversity is that ordinary things can make extraordinary differences on children's lives. And when I looked at what do you mean by the ordinary things, like the walk through the park, like prayer, like a sense of humor, like some kind of a talent or a hobby or an interest, knowing I've got one friend. And I looked at that and said, that's what seems to be a problem. What we've got is ordinary things are being removed a lot from our children's lives. And maybe we just need to reboot. Yeah. And it's not just the GPA that's going to help our kids in this world. It's those ordinary things that help fill them and are going to be really good decompressors to help them get along with life.
Yeah. So many things that you said that I'd love to unpack, and I'll pick a few, but even as you're talking about those ordinary things and those small things, I mean, as a neuroscientist, even thinking about what we understand about the brain and having the breaks and just the things in our environment that can bring us pleasure. And even as we can engage in our day-to-day activities, how can that really can help us navigate and just have a place of mental health, wellness. And I think oftentimes we talk about that in adult circles. We don't always, I think, as much as we need to really think about that for children and youth, where it's even that much more important, especially from a developmental standpoint. So it's great that you've been paying attention to that and to elevate that as well.
Oh, one of the things that when you asked, what am I looking forward to right now, is I'm finally being able to get back on the road and go and visit schools.
Mm-hmm.
And the best thing I get to do before I talk to the big school district is do focus groups with teens. Oh my gosh, they just are so extraordinary. Once they know that whatever they say, it's going to be, there's no judgment, just tell me. So I've been trying to figure out and ask them, what's causing all of this stress?
Mm-hmm.
And what are the solutions for it? And one kid, I just came from College Station, Texas. He said, we are so stressed, but the thing is that nobody's teaching us how to de-stress. And it isn't something you learn on a worksheet. And it's not like a one-time health unit. The big thing you guys have got to do is give us a repertoire of stuff. And then we choose what works for us. And then we have got to practice that over and over and over and over until we can do it without you. I went, oh my gosh,
wow, that's so insightful.
I said, so if you're going to make us do that deep breathing stuff, that's cool. But don't just tell us what it is. Every single day we should practice that, maybe 2 minutes a day.
Yeah.
That's exactly, we could be doing that at home. When we say we're so tired, no, get 2 minutes a day. Just practice one thing until it becomes a new family habit. I say that one because one of the coolest places I ever worked was on Army bases, 18 of them. And the commanders kept telling me, you should go talk to the Navy SEALs. I said, why? He says, because we're retraining them to get through some really tough, adverse times. And I'm going, that's for sure. So when I asked the Navy SEALs, I said, what are you guys doing? I said, 3 things, and you better tell kids this because this is really helping us. And it's actually proven to rewire our brains. Okay, what's one? We figure out what our stress signs are and we start pointing it out to each other. We don't wait to the meltdown. We point them out. Hey, you start grinding your teeth, or you start going like this, or I can see, your heart hopping up and down. We could do that to our kids. Not that you're going to get time out, but just have you noticed that right before you go to do the time test, this is what you do. Then they say, we tell ourselves, chill out or relax. And then we take a 1-2 breath. Slow 2 breath from our abdomen, nothing new, but it's slow 2 breath, way like we're riding up an elevator. Keep focusing on the breath, hold it, and then slowly let it out. So the exhale is twice as long as the inhale. UC Berkeley says that's exactly what works.
Yeah.
Why do we teach that to kids? Doesn't cost a dime.
Yeah. So important. And on that note, I'm curious because even as you're talking about the focus groups with the teens, it seems like there's a push and pull. I mean, even the kids that I've talked to in schools and having kids myself too, it seems like sometimes there's just different places that people are at. So I'm curious what your view is of where those mental health conversations are for kids. Because sometimes I get the sense that the kids are thinking about it more than the administrators or the teachers. And not to downplay the efforts that the administrators and teachers are putting in, but it seems like sometimes there's a disconnect, almost as if kids and youth are more ready to move into it than we give them credit for. Now, I guess I'm answering the question as I'm saying it, but I'm curious if that's been your perception.
I knew we would agree on anything you comes out of your mouth is going to come out of mine. And I think that's what's happening right now is the pandemic aftermath. We knew that it was going to be stressful for us all. But now when we're looking at, okay, now we can get back to normal, I think we ought to put the red flag up and go, really? What's going on with the kids? The first thing that the kids are saying that I had seen, but they're now admitting their motivation is lower, their focusing abilities are lower. And this is the top performing kids. These are, we're more irritable. We can't handle the stress. We're not sleeping as well as we used to. So when you put all that together, the last thing you're going to be able to do is say, sit there for 3 hours and keep going. They said, you got to reinvent a little bit. That homework load are just astronomical on us. We really are having a tough time. And we really need to feel comfortable going and talking to the counselors. Many of the counselors they're wonderful, they said, but they've been really helping us prior to coming in with our GPAs and our getting to college. You want us to now open up and tell them how upset we are or how much in pain we are. We get to build trust. I love the comments they came up with because they're just, you could read any psychology book and it's exactly the same.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think the first thing is we are seeing a regression in behavior patterns. If I was to ask any teacher or counselor or headmaster, what are you seeing? Kid regression. More disrespect is coming up. The whole society is disrespectful. The adults have been behaving very badly. I think it's spilling over to the kids. But the second thing is inability to really, that motivation and the perseverance isn't there. But in all fairness, you can't have the perseverance unless you have the self-control, unless you have the confidence, and they all kind of work together, as you know. So you have to start with where the kids are.
Yeah, I think that's so well said. One of the episodes we had recently was, again, more at the college level, but someone who's an expert in trauma-informed teaching and learning too, and just acknowledging all the things that the kids have gone through and how, like you said, that's going to affect their actions in the classroom, but not ignoring that and trying to just push beyond it, but being aware of that too. What do you say to parents and teachers though? Because I know sometimes the comments that come back, people say, well, I'm here to teach. I'm not a therapist. I don't know how to navigate this. And so even though, as you're saying appropriately, we need to push beyond just the GPA piece, sometimes people find that very difficult to break outside of that. Do you have tips that you try and share in those situations?
For instance, I'm going to Indiana tomorrow. And what I'm trying to do is when I talk to the teachers, it's all about, I know you're teaching, don't stop the lesson, but let's find simple little ways to weave in these things. For instance, as you're talking, you know that your kids' attention spans, I don't care if they're 17 or 3 or shorter. So take brain breaks. And that is, don't talk for 50 minutes. Instead, let's talk for 10 minutes. And then let's take a 30-second turn to your partner. What's one thing you just heard? You're going to get more retention from your kids. Or just pick up your pencil and draw one little thing that the teacher just said. That's one thing. One of the best things I've ever seen is quiet time that's being done in the Oakland schools. What they did brilliantly was shave off 1 minute of each class time, just 1 minute of each class time. Now you have 5 minutes at the beginning of every single day. 5 minutes at the beginning of every single day. Every kid in the entire school and the teachers do 1-2 breathing. You can veg if you want to. Half the kids are sleeping for the first time. You can choose meditation if you choose to. But here's the fabulous thing. They've been tracking it. Tardies are going down. Suspensions are going down. Behavior problems are going down. Test scores went through the roof. They did absolutely nothing different than let's just focus on what the kids seem to need. Let's teach them how. Let's have a counselor come in and show you how to do a 1-2 breath. And it made mind-bogglingly differences. So it's not that you're stopping teaching.
Exactly.
You're going with where your students are, trying to get them more engaged because they're not. They're also, by the way, more risk adverse. They're afraid to raise their hands. They're really social anxieties up with our kids because they've been facing a screen for so long. So a simple thing I also tell a teacher, you can tell them at home. The first thing is Mary Bud Rowe, brilliant researcher. She said, you want to ask a question? Ask the question. Then stop and pause and don't say anything for at least 3 seconds because the average one of us says something immediately. So what's the answer? If you wait 3 seconds, you'll get every kid to say something. The kid who wouldn't have said anything is going to open his mouth and say, maybe a word. The other kid who would have said something is now going to give you a dissertation, but it's time to wait and think can be critical. And the final thing is our expectations. Parents, it's like a rubber band. Your goal is to figure out what your kid is capable of right this minute. If you don't know, ask the teacher. But line your expectations up and then gently keep stretching him. Gently. Don't snap him because you'll snap his spirit, but you keep stretching one step more and one step more and one step more. Just little things that's using the research that don't mean it's another program, but it means we can make a difference on how our kids are more engaged, better performers, better behaviors, and their confidence will also go up.
Yeah, that's so powerful on so many levels. I mean, and just to hear the outcomes too, even though some of those things weren't the focus, but just having that 5-minute pause time, how it had so many positive effects in so many ways. I'm curious, as I'm listening to you talk through those things, and because a lot of what we've talked about has been on college and university campuses, I'm curious how much there's a resetting of expectations, because you even talked about that from parents. But one thing that I've also noticed is sometimes helping students reset their own expectations, because sometimes they're setting them too high.
Yes.
Or something that pre-COVID, something that's not attainable, falling short of it, feeling guilty and anxious they didn't meet those goals, and then getting stuck in a cycle where they get further and further away from goals. Are there any aspects of that you also see at younger ages as well, even as you've talked about the parents setting expectations? What about the kids themselves?
Oh, all across the board. Their expectations, they say, fascinating, of what do you need? I guess the first thing is, what do you need from your parents? The number one thing I get from the kids is would you please tell them to just say that you love me for who I am and don't quit asking me about the grade, because we are so worried about letting our parents down. I know they're worried about us, but we are really, really scrambling to get it together. If you take one step more, you can teach goal setting to kids, but goal setting is don't aim to here. A good coach of an Olympic athlete never said you're going to get a gold medal tomorrow.
Yeah.
What's your time today? And then you teach them one step more and one step more and one step more. Or you have a child who's overwhelmed. Oh my gosh, because of the anxiety. So what you do there is you tell them to chunk the task. And that is, let's look at it all. Okay, don't go worried about the whole thing. Let's do the first row or the second row. Or is there one thing on that whole sheet that is your stumbler? This example, I taught piano as a kid, and Mr. White drove me to early retirement on the piano.
You still remember his name.
Oh my God, Mr. White. If you made one mistake, wherever you were, you had to start all over again. So what I would do was only focus on the mistake. My stress level was so high that I started to hate piano. Bless Miss Thompson. She was my next teacher. And what she had is a whole different approach. She'd identify my stumbler. What's the one little thing that's getting in your way, Michele? Let's just practice that little bar over and over and over. Now you're fine. Now start at the beginning. Well, now I'm relaxed, and that's what a good coach does.
Yeah.
They never say you might as well quit. You can't do it right. No, let's look at the video. Oh, your foot's going the wrong way. Let's just practice your foot going that way. See, the goal is to take all those little evidence-based strategies, not them all, or your kid will never let you read another book. One little thing at a time. What works for you until you can teach your child to do it on their own. Because the one thing I have discovered about resilient children is they have agency. They don't wait for us to do it. They finally figure out the strategies. And that's what we've got to help our kids learn is you've got it, but here's the strategy that'll help you get it. We'll practice and practice until you can do it all your own. Then they'll use it the rest of their lives.
Yeah. That's so many practical pieces there that all seem like they're a cultural shift. I mean, like you said, they're all evidence-based, but because of the performance being so ingrained in our culture, I think it's that much more difficult at times.
Well, I think the first step, is you can't change your parenting or your teaching or anything unless you understand the why. And I always tell the school, I said, the most wonderful thing you could do is, and it won't take any more than a minute, is give every kid a survey and just fill out 3 things. What's the one thing you wish the teachers would, what do you appreciate about the teachers? What's the one thing you appreciate about your parents or wish they would do? What's the one feeling that you're having right now? And anxiety, stress, overwhelmed always come up on the feeling. The one thing they appreciate about the teachers, it makes them cry every time. I just did this with Jacksonville, Florida, and the kids came out, these were teens. The lunch lady, I love her because she sings all day. And I walk into the lunchroom and she's singing. The custodian, because he says, have a good one, Spike, you're going to do it. The teacher who waits for me at the door and says, simple little things. And then I looked at the parents and I was like, oh my gosh, what's the one thing you appreciate your parent or your family? I can't tell you how many times my dog came up on the list.
Wow.
My dog. That my mom drives me to school. It wasn't the things we said. And we've got to maybe have some empathy for our children because they're really hurting right now.
Yeah. That surveys are so, even just the naming it, as you mentioned, which goes back to, on the one hand, naming the things that are challenging, but naming the things that are giving life and giving support at the same time. So important. So I'm going to throw a little bit of an audible because this is a question that I've been curious about for some time. Obviously, I know you focus on the child development, but one thing that, again, just talking to kids that seems to come up sometimes as I hear them kind of talking about scenarios in the schools. And again, the neuroscientist in me automatically goes on to thinking, well, these teachers are spread very thin. And I'm not sure the teachers are actually attentive to their own stressors and irritants and things like that. So is that something that comes up in conversation, even though I know you focus on the child development?
No.
Also have that awareness for the adults who are in the class.
It's such a critical comment because, first of all, we are losing an enormous amount of teachers who are retiring. If there's one thing every one of us should do is write a thank you note to a teacher. Because the reason that they got into teaching is because they love children and they want to make a difference. Just writing them a thank you is one of the best ways to reduce burnout. Second of all is at the end of every one of my speeches, I spend 30 minutes talking about, now, what are you going to do to take care of yourself? What's your one go-to that works for you? I would suggest at schools that you do more sunshine calls, just taking time for each other, collegiality, finding a support network. What is working for you? And in some cases, the counselor has a before school yoga group. That doesn't mean all teachers are going to do it.
Yeah.
For some teachers, they say they really love books, bibliotherapy, getting into the shoes of a character who's been through a tough time and coming out to the other side. Reading the book Educated can be enormous. Malala's books can be extraordinary. Here's a kid who endured and got through. It helps the teacher realize resilience is something that you're not born with. You can acquire it. And we can help our children, and it's doable. But once they begin to realize you can do it, I remember when I was writing the book Thrivers, each chapter has a real story about somebody who endured and made it to an extraordinary tough time. And I remember when I was writing the chapter on empathy, I was reading about Elizabeth Smart. Here is a girl who went through 9 months of absolute terror, kidnapped, a knife in her bedroom, and then horrific horrors of horrors. But the one chapter that it was the stop moment. How did she endure it? She said, it was the second day of captivity when all of a sudden I remembered something my mother said to me. She came crystal clear into my head and she said, Elizabeth, no matter what, remember, I will always love you. No matter whatever happens, I'm always there for you. And I said, if my mother is always going to love me for who I am, I'm going to be able to get through it. She says, that gave me the fortitude to keep going.
Wow. That's so powerful.
Yeah. So I think we forget those ordinary things. And it's like, go home and hug your kid, but tell them I'm here for you no matter what happens. I love you for who you are.
Yeah. And it's so easy for us to slip out of that. And I think that ties everything together, what you've been talking about, both from the kids and from our expectations as we all kind of get spread thin in those places. So, wow, I just feel like you just need just to pause there and just really take that in, because I think that comment even of itself can go such a long way. But the other thing which really stands out from what you're talking about is just the learning that happens, the learning of the resilience. Now you talked about that with empathy as well. So I'd also want to get to your new book, but maybe to park on this empathy piece for a little bit and just have you elaborate on what you've learned about really teaching that and how that can be developed and kind of stick for the long term. What are some of the principles that have come up in your work?
I think it was dealing with, it was once again a moment that just changed my life. It was sitting on a bench in the Cambodian killing fields. And I was crying so hard I had a nosebleed, because there in front of me was a tree with these little ribbons on it. And each ribbon stood for a child who had been slaughtered on that tree because they were crying. Next to me was a monolith of 5 stories high of skulls. And I could not believe anybody could be so evil. That president was a former teacher who set the evil. So that's doable. I couldn't believe it. I happened to walk off the killing fields, and there was a little teeny table that was selling a few books. And there was oh my gosh, I picked it up. It was by Samuel Alliner, one of the most amazing social psychologists. His family had been slaughtered in Germany during the Holocaust. And a perfect woman, just didn't know anyone or him. Samuel was 12 at the time. Her name was Belinda. She said, Samuel, come in here. I need to save you. Run as fast as you can. His family went off to a death camp. She saved his life. And now the entire rest of his life, he's trying to figure out what makes Belindas of the world. Not the evil, what flips the other side. And what he did was extraordinary. He's interviewed hundreds of rescuers, Christians during World War II who risked their life to save Jewish people. Why, he said. And the commonality of each one of them were 3 things. I call them the 3 E's. Every one of them said it was how I was raised. Whoa, how were you raised? The first thing was example. They saw my dad or I saw my mom. She always really was the example of empathy or kindness. The second thing was expectations. In our family, you were expected to be kind. You were expected to do good. The third one was experiences. My dad would walk it. My mom would say it, but then we did experiences. So we would deliver overcoats to a needy family, or we'd bake cookies to the neighbor next door. Those three things started to build empathy. So each person said, I saw myself as a caring person. What the parents were doing was changing the child's mindset.
Yeah.
So now they see themselves as a caring person. You act how you see yourself to be. And I think what we've done is we put so much of our mindset into the GPA and the test score that when the kid comes home, we rarely say, oh, what good thing did you do? As opposed to what grade did you get? It doesn't mean you're going to stop asking, are you studying your hardest? But it also means this was I expect you to do. The lesson from it all is that empathy can be cultivated. And the research now is clear that our children are hardwired for it. But unless we really make it a little more intentional in today's world in particular, it's going to lie dormant. And I swear, especially after 2 years of physical distancing and looking at a screen as opposed to face, because the pathway to empathy is looking at someone and going, how would she feel? How do I feel? That emotional literacy piece starts the trajectory towards, I'm going to reach out and help. So those are the pieces I learned. And that's why I wrote on selfie. I went, okay, if this is doable, then what are the habits that we can start teaching? And let's make it easy. One of the most critical ones is, besides instilling in your child the caring mindset, we need to talk feelings far more naturally to our kids.
Yeah.
We can watch Inside Out with our older kids. We can say, how are you doing today? We can say, sit here and watch dad's face. And when he walks in, and you'll know if this is a good time to ask him for the allowance or not. Can be extremely wonderful moments. But you can also, for some children, they're a little nervous about saying the emotion. So you can do what an ER doctor says. And he always says, how bad's the pain? Show me with your fingers. A 0 is you could be asleep. You're so relaxed. A 7, you're about ready to explode because the pain is so bad. But you can do that with your children. Your children can give you, I'm at a 3, Mom. Thank you for telling me, sweetie. Let's figure out how to get it to a 2 or a 1. You know?
Yeah.
It's that empathy piece of us trying to empathize with our kids.
Yeah.
The starter point. Then we start helping them learn emotions. We start helping them not see it in themselves, but how would you feel if that happened to you? What does she need in order to feel better? What can you do? You watch TV, it's just gloriously, just horrific stuff. But you can also say, what can we do to help? Yeah, that's a good idea. I know you're really upset by that, but let's go collect some. Let's keep a box by your back door. It's a charity box for your family. And it's for gently used toys and books and whatever, backpacks. And each time it's filled, your family, not you, Mom, Dad, your family delivers it to someone in need. Every child said it was the look in the other person's eye that said, I got to keep doing this.
That's so well said. I mean, I love so many pieces of that. Just the 3 E's that you shared too. I mean, I've been thinking about the example and the experience together, because as you're talking about parents really tuning in with their children, but then also having times to say, as parents, well, this is what I'm feeling in this moment. And to have the kids also learn from that example. And again, I keep kind of moving back to the college sphere because that's the space that I live in. But I've even seen that on campus in a lot of ways too, with a lot of the social justice issues that have been going on with students who have said, oh, I've never heard my professors actually talk about their own struggles with this or create the space to have those conversations. So as those things are beginning to happen, it seems like even though this is a later developmental stage, there's places for people to actually build community and empathy with one another, because they can now both see where they're coming from and then tie into so many of those practical outcomes that you're talking about as well.
Well, I think the trajectory from me to we, and that's where we're aiming for, I hope we're aiming for as a society, is to listen to other people's stories, to realize how much we have in common with them. When a child says he's different, no, let's find out how we're the same. It's too often that sped apart, and we're becoming so divisive as a group. We've got to figure out, look at the kind of books you're reading to your children. Make sure that you're reading different genders, different races, different incomes, different possibilities, because books, literary fiction, are known to be able to open up your empathy. Okay. They also help you in terms of learning, but you find the right book. That's why Wonder is one of the most popular books for children right now, because they feel with that character.
Yeah.
I ask middle school kids, what's the one book that teachers should always, always, always help kids read? And I'm blown away that they say The Outsiders. And when that's
Oh, really?
50 years old, why? I love their answer, because we've got to understand what it feels like to be excluded.
Mm.
How glorious to have that as an answer. And that means that you're exposing kids, and then you're doing something wonderful like you did, having the space to be able to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
Have those dialogues where a kid knows it's okay to open up and to be assertive, because that's another trait of resilient children. They have voice.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, so important. And it just, as we're talking through, this is one of those I'm definitely gonna have to go back and listen to, because I think you're bringing so many things to life. And like you said, there's so much evidence for it, but to hear it in this context and be reminded of it, I think is so important. There's so many practical pieces that we can pull out of it.
Thank you. Well, that was the goal. The goal was really, after listening to my dad, I saw two huge needs. And I think it was, again, I started to do focus groups with teens. And I never realized prior to the pandemic how they were struggling, they were hurting, their anxiety, their stress, even though they were loved to death. Their opportunities were endless, but something was really amiss with the kids. And then the pandemic hit. Well, a crisis only amplifies a pre-existing issue, and therefore the CDC and the Surgeon General's reports on mental health needs are critical. But it also means, hey, folks, we got to reset what we're doing here. We have to reset what we're thinking. And this is, when I wrote the last one, Thrivers, was empathy was what I did was to choose the 7 most highly correlated strengths that research and all the work on resilience says are teachable, that will impact mental health, resilience, and peak performance. Of course, number 2 on the list was empathy, because I don't think you can go anywhere without empathy. But the first on the list was confidence. The child needs to know who they are, what their passion is that we talked about earlier. And we've driven that passion out of it. Many kids said, we're being driven to be what my parents want me to be, not who I am. I think that's so essential. The third one we already talked about too is self-control. Unless you can figure out how to put the brake on impulses and do that 1-2 breath or whatever works for you. A fourth is integrity. That would be what Samuel Allender discovered. Those parents knew exactly what the kind of kid they wanted to turn out of that house. In this house, we're going to be kind, we're going to be caring, we're going to be socially responsible. Empathy and social responsible were the 2 highest correlated values of a home that raises a kid who's altruist.
Wow.
But they kept going that over and over again. And then the 5th one is curiosity. We've helicoptered our kids to death. We've solved every problem for them. There goes the agency. So curiosity is helping the kid be creative and open to ideas and possibilities. So when the challenge comes, you're not dumb. You figure out, what am I going to do instead? Mom's not going to help me this time. She's going to teach me how to brainstorm. What's the problem? What's one thing you could have done differently? And another thing. 6th is perseverance. Now you're going to keep on going, because you've got all these other little skills along the way, and you're going to realize your effort is what gets you moving, not your GPA or your zip code. And the final one is optimism and hope. If we don't instill that in a child, particularly in today's world and the images that they're seeing, after a while, a lot of them are going to start raising a white flag of, I surrender, why should I do it? And I give up. That's not the kind of child we want. We want a strong kid who knows the world is going to be okay. And there's things that you can do to make it okay.
Yeah. And again, just backed up by all the research and tying that full circle, especially ending with that hope, as you mentioned before, too. There's so many good things that you're doing. I think there's a lot that the listeners will be able to digest here and to re-listen to as well. And you've talked about this already, but I'm curious, with all of these efforts, what's the piece that brings you the most joy in this work?
The kids. I didn't realize, because I was the person that was just reading the research off to the side. I've got a pile this big and I just keep reading it. And then I'd go and talk to the kids and I'd go, my gosh, that's exactly what the research said. It's like, why don't we just talk to the kids? But they also have solutions, simple little things that they suggest. And so there isn't a time when I can be exhausted getting off a plane. But if I know I'm going to do a focus group, I get rejuvenated going, that's the next generation and there's hope. Yeah.
Yeah. And in some ways, even I'm tying back to your dad again, too. But, you're building community in so many ways with all the lives that you're touching. It really just makes me think about the way that people invested in your dad and what you're doing for others and the community you're building around that. So,
well, thank you. It's been a joy. It's still a ride. And the more every time you turn on the news, you realize this is more relevant now than ever. I think the piece that, if there's one takeaway here, resilience is not a program and one trait. I see that a lot. It's not locked into your DNA. This is something that research says can be done. It isn't an overnight process either. So we can all relax. This is a new thing of a new parenting and educational plan that we've got to weave in. And we weave it into, not like at 6 o'clock, we're going to talk about resilience, but we weave it into our discipline, the books we read, the talks we have with our kids. We just need to be a little more intentional and know this is important and we can do it. Find one little tip you want to weave in and do that every day, a minute a day. And I think that's how we start raising stronger kids. Yeah,
that's so well said, that intentionality. And as you emphasize throughout, one step at a time, not everything at once, but just really being able to bake it in a sense. And well, as a final question, this has been a joy just having you here for your inspiration and encouragement. Where can people go to find out more resources, either about you, your books, or just resources in general around these topics?
Well, my website is micheleborba.com. I'm a 1L Michelle, and Borba rhymes with Zorba. So there you go. Thrivers is the latest book that will be out in paperback March 8th in digital form, audio form, also paperback. So I think what I tried to do is make this nugget-proof kind of simple stuff. So never hopefully read an entire book of mine in one sitting. Instead, crack it open. There's a test at the beginning of which of those strengths is your children's strengths or weakness. Not you see it as a weakness, but you see it as there's where I'm going to start. And then just keep looking at it as one particular ongoing plan. The other thing I think we do wrong is we try to do it ourselves. Get a grandmother involved, get the daycare worker involved, pass it on to the teacher. Here's the one little thing I'm working on this month. And you'll always optimize your gains with your child.
Yeah, great advice. Great advice. Well, thank you so much for being here on the Addy Hour, for all the encouragement and inspiration and just the practical tips that you share with our listeners too. I know this is one that people will be grateful for, and I think are going to be able to share with others and also listen to a few times to catch all of these nuances and some of these practical tips as well. So thanks so much for being here.
Thank you. Yes, to you. Stay well.
You too.